Hi guys, welcome to Learn with W3 Schools. My name is Dr. Zeeshan, and today we're going to talk about something that's always confusing to many students, that is props and state in ReactJS. So we're going to talk about what's the difference between React props and React State, when to use each, and in which situations we should be using each of them. So let's begin. So by the end of this course, you're going to talk about, you're going to learn about the basics of React, understanding the props and state. We're going to talk about props versus state, what are the key differences, especially when to use each, okay, in which scenarios, in which situation you should be using each. And then we'll try to look into some real world example, how to solve the problem with props and state. So by the end of the today, you will have leveled up your React knowledge. You will not only understand the props and state, but also feel confident about when and how to use them in the real world scenarios. Plus, with hands-on examples, you will see these concepts in action. So stick with me and let's turn the confusion into a clarity. Next up is the state. Picture a simple counter app. We are using React's use state hook here. Count is our state variable. Okay, so the count becomes our state variable. When you click on the button, the state updates and React automatically renders the UI. See how powerful the state is. It lets your React, pun intended, to users interactions seamlessly. Again, in this case, the counter app takes a button. When user clicks on this button, we call it JavaScript function. So we use bracket start, bracket close. This becomes our JavaScript expression. Inside this, we call a component called set count, and we use this count state. Because we want to maintain that every time user clicks on this button, the value of this count becomes +1. So take the current value of count and add 1 to it. Next time user clicks on a button, again now take the current value of count and add 1 to it. So for example, the first time when you execute the code, the count is starting with 1. The next time I've clicked on it, now it takes the current value of count, okay, which is count plus 1, adds 1 to it and assigns it back to the count. The next time it adds again, so this is basically like a loop, it behaves like a loop. So every time you click on this button, it takes the current value of count, adds 1 to it and then assigns it back to the variable count. Hence the value of count is updated. To maintain this state, we use the constant count set count use state 0, meaning that we are changing the data inside the count variable, making it a non-immutable value. So you can update it, change it again and again while maintaining its previous value. So every time user clicks on count, the value of this count is updated through the set count component, and it changes or maintains the state here. That's how we use it. So what becomes the key difference? Here the side-by-side comparison is given. Props are about sharing. Isn't it nice to share? They let you pass the data around the components, like a parent passing notes to the kids. So the sharing comes into mind. But the state, that's a component's personal diary. It tracks the data that changes over time. So it's your personal diary. That basically means that it belongs to a personal data, a personal component, and they can change their diary regularly. So a prop cannot be changed. A state, because it's your personal components, local to each component, it can be changed as it goes along. Both are crucial, but each serves a unique purpose. So you cannot say that I can use anything interchangeably. They both have a very unique and specific purpose. It's like the yin and the yang of React. Balance here is the main key. So you need to understand where to use the props and where to use the state. That's where the yin and yang concept comes into play. So we pass it to the parent from the child. It is immutable and the shared between components, yes, but you cannot change it because it's immutable. Whereas state becomes immutable, it's mostly known as local to the component. So whenever it's defined, it's only a part of that particular component. Manage dynamic component data that needs to be changed within a component, maintaining its previous state. That's how we basically identify it. That's the key difference between each. So any situation where you need to just pass the data to a component and then component has to use this data without changing it, that's where the props come into play. But any situation where you need to pass the data to a component, where component can change the data, work on the data, process the data, that's where the state comes into play. So once you want to change the data locally inside a component, you basically use a state. Once you just want to render the data that's been given to a state to work on it, but don't change it, that's where the props come into play. Hopefully makes sense, right? So let's see. Let's mix props and state. In this to-do app, the to-do list components uses props to get the title and the state to manage the dynamic list of tasks. So if I say we want to just create a to-do app, I use the use state prop from the React. Again, the whole complete code is there. So we need to use this import statements ensuring that our state is created. I said okay. Then we go and we create a component called to do list. Okay, it takes a title. Now this title basically behaves like a prop because we just want the title, we don't want to change it. Because this content does not need to be changed, we pass it as a prop. Hence, that's a prop given to our component. But when we want to add more tasks which can later be changed, modified, updated, that's where the state comes into play. So now we use the use state functions here. This allows us to add the tasks or as individual task. Make sense? So notice how props bring in fixed data here, while the state manages the user's input. So the state here manages the user's input, the data that users enters in form of tasks. And they update the content in real time. Combining these two creates a dynamic and a reusable app. Pretty amazing, right? So in this case, when the user clicks on input, types in a value, whatever value is there, we basically provide it as a task. Then on change, whenever user wants to change something, we call the set task component e.target.value. So we just pass it the current value that user is passing. So as the user is typing the value, the data goes into our state here. Button on click add task. As soon as you click on a task, that task is basically added to the task list through this add task component. So this add task component here basically uses the function and adds the data inside our tasks. This creates a very simple to-do app. So we create an app function and we call this to-do component list, to-do list component to add the content here. So the title is coming from the prop and the tasks are actually, because the states needs to be maintained, is coming from the use state function here. Make sense? Simple as that. So using a simple props and state features, we are able to manage a simple web app. Now, let's look into a more example. In this case, the problem is that we need to build a reusable button component that can display different labels and styles based on the props. So based on what I provide on the prop, the buttons basically need to change. So the props are perfect for customizing components. Here we create a reusable but reusable button components. It accepts the label and style as the props to determine its text and appearances. This lets you create a consistent UI elements while maintaining flexibility. Imagine designing a whole website where every button has a unique purpose but follows a consistent design pattern. Props make this an easy and elegant way. So what we do is we create a button, give it a label, for example, submit button. We give it a CSS style attribute. Again, this is in HTML, and then we provided an argument called background color, blue and white. In this case, background color, red and white. So we provide certain styles to the listing. Then we create a button component. We provided a label. and a style. So when we define the button, we give it a consistent style and we can create a consistent label. So the output would be basically we get two buttons, one labeled as submit with blue color background and the other with a cancel with a red color background. That way we maintain the UI elements consistency as well. Hey, let's look at one more example. In this case, we use state for user interactions. So here where state shines, handling user interactions. Okay, this is where the state absolutely is wonderful because it is able to maintain and manage the user's input and user's interaction, and it knows what user is trying to do through the states, because again state maintains what's happening. It maintains the state. So in this example, is dark mode keeps track of the current theme, and clicking the button toggles the light and the dark mode. Using this dynamic behavior is all thanks to the state. It allows the UI to adapt instantly based on users' actions. And guess what? Users love a good theme toggle. Almost every website needs to have this. So we create a button called toggle theme. When user clicks on this button, it actually calls this component here, toggle theme button. In this case, we maintain a state is dark mode is set dark mode. Hence, when I click on this, we create another component here. We set it is dark mode. If it is, inverse it. So this means it changes the variable here. So use state mode becomes a key component here that maintains and knows in which state am I currently in. So if I am in my dark mode, the negation here, this negation will actually change this dark into the light theme by making it false. If I'm already in the false mode, which basically means I'm in the light mode, this will switch back to it. So very easily we can toggle between dark and light by just using this negating and maintaining the current state here. Okay. So whenever I click on a button to toggle the theme, I just call my component. It checks if I am in a dark mode, change it to light. If I'm not in the dark mode, make it dark. So this toggle effect can be very easily maintained here. Okay. So this is what basically we're trying to do using the state. So users interaction can easily be understood and notified by while maintaining the state here. No need for prop here. Finally, let's see one last example, combining props and state for a shopping cart. Now again, this is not a complete shopping cart, just a simple example of how things are working. So let's combine props and state to create a shopping cart. The cart item component uses props to display the details, while the shopping cart component manages the cart and the total price using the state. Every time you add an item, okay, every time you click on a button to add an item, the state gets updated. Okay, so every time I click on this button here, this state updates the current information in my cart. The state updates the cart array and then the total cost. This kind of dynamic functionality is which basically makes a modern web apps engaging and user friendly. React props and states work together beautifully to bring this all to life. So as soon as user clicks on a button, the item is added into the cart and the cart state is updated along with its total cost. But at the same time, when the cart is updated, I also update the name and the price information here as well. So we work together in terms of props and state. So here we are using again props to update the name and price. Here we are using state to maintain the items that are currently in my cart and their total price. So using both informations, I can very easily manage the shopping cart application. So that's all for today. Hope you understand the difference how we use state and props. Want to access all this source code and this reference material and more details about it, please visit my blog. I have all the source code on my blog where you can copy and follow the examples yourself as well. The link is again in the description below, but the website is Code with Dr. Zeeshan Bhatti. Again, my name is Dr. Shan. Thank you for watching. If you find this interesting, please leave a comment. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Until next time. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to check out these cool videos as well. Again, working on React, they would be quite useful and helpful to you. Let me know what else you want to learn on React and in other coding technologies, and I will try to upload the videos as soon as I can. This is Dr. Shan signing off.